Hello and welcome to the ChrissieCast live from the compound, and today is a very special day, ChrissieCasters, because you're about to be treated to the first musical number that this podcast has properly enjoyed. It's performed by the incredible Ben Abrahams, somebody that I've loved for a long time. You are about to get a new favourite song, and I'm so excited for you to hear it. Ben is an Australian musician, artist, writer, performer, gorgeous man who had a deeply religious upbringing, and he made a brave choice to be his authentic self a few years ago, no matter what the cost. And I think about his story every time I need to remind myself that the ugliest truth is better than the prettiest lie. I absolutely love this chat with Ben. He's so interesting and gentle and wonderful. I think you're going to love it too. ChrissieCasters, I give you the gift that is Ben Abraham. Welcome to the ChrissieCast, Ben Abraham.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so thrilled to meet you because I love you so much.
Why does it feel like we already know each other?
It's weird,
funny?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I have found the best thing about social media. Obviously, there's, foul things.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you see a kindred spirit, you can see it immediately.
Yeah. I feel like you have that energy. You must have that with a lot of people.
No, not really.
Oh, interesting.
Not really, because I'm an odd person. Would you say that you're an odd person? Like, have you felt weird?
I'm quite an antisocial person.
Me too.
Yeah, interesting.
Me too.
Right.
But I think we both appear.
I was going to say, so what's funny, I have, look, don't want to betray my sweet, sweet fans, but my persona on stage and my persona on social media and things is this sort of warm, friendly, nice, hopeful person. And in person, I think I'm probably a little pricklier, and I'm certainly much shyer than people think. And certainly in group settings, I don't talk very much. And I've been told by people very close to me that I make a bad first impression.
I think it's very interesting because I've come to the same conclusion about myself. But I think those two people, those two Chrissies,
yes,
the sort of quiet hermit Chrissie, can only exist, or vice versa, like alongside.
I agree.
The warm, because they're both really me.
Yes, that's the irony. You're hitting the nail on the head. It's not that it's a fake performance.
No, you're
stage,
not pretending.
But I've sort of separated out the earnest, sweet, vulnerable person that's on stage singing the song.
Yeah.
And then when it's just me, I'm just like, just leave me alone. I can, like, lockdown, I mean, bearing in mind the lockdowns in Los Angeles where I live were very different. I thrived. Being locked in my house for months, I was fine.
Really?
Totally fine. I did not need.
Did you have a flatmate or anything?
I did have a friend that stayed with me for a little bit of it, but honestly, if she wasn't there, I would have been fine.
I love it so much. Speaking of your beautiful fans,
great. Yeah,
I wanted to share a message I received from Leanne.
Oh, great.
She says, "I love Ben so much." And of course, she's speaking about the nice Ben.
Yes,
she's not talking about prickly mean Ben.
No, not talking about mean Ben.
One day I will see him live. The first 3 songs of every one of my days are Ben's.
Stop.
How does that feel?
That's great. That's so good. That's so good.
And I sent her a message going, you know that he's touring Australia? She goes, oh, only Melbourne and Perth. Then I gave her a link to your dates, and she said, he's playing in Sydney next Thursday night. I'm going to book a flight.
Oh, my God.
So what I want you to do, and this is a message for nice, warm, friendly Ben.
He's listening.
You must give Leanne a shout out.
I absolutely, I'm going to write this down.
Write it down. Write it down, because she goes, there is still hope for me to see him live.
It's so sweet.
Isn't it so sweet?
Wait, where is she from? Melbourne?
She's from, I don't know where she's from. No,
Leanne.
She's maybe Adelaide, and you're not playing Adelaide. She's flying to see you.
Okay, I'm putting it in. Oh, that's quite sweet, isn't it?
It is.
It's so funny when you get this far in, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit about how long my career has been. You can very easily lose sight of those moments and the importance of them, and all you can sort of think about is getting dropped by your record label, or not having enough streaming numbers, or not having enough money in the bank account. But
the stats and the
all
business
real things. But somebody booking a flight just to come and see me is That's crazy.
And it reminds you of why you probably started doing
100%.
Yeah.
The young version of me, if you had told me at 20 years old that I would mean enough, that my music would mean enough to somebody that they would book a flight to see me play, I wouldn't have believed you. No.
And there you go.
And here we are.
You did just mention that you've had a very long career.
Very long.
I managed to unearth a statistic about you, Ben Abraham.
Oh, dear.
And I believe that you and I have been in the biz, as they say,
Yes.
for exactly the same amount of time, because you were on Australian Idol in 2003.
You are the first. You're the first person to interrogate me about this. Great. Yeah, I was.
So, and that was
a lot of people don't know that.
That was the year that I did Big Brother.
That's crazy.
So we were.
Isn't that crazy?
We were launching at the same time.
Well,
how was that experience for you?
It was terrible. I mean, it was formative. It was a real transitional point for me. I grew up singing in my family. My parents were singers and grew up singing in church. And singing it never occurred to me as a career path, but it was something that I just sort of was passionate about. And I remember when Idol had just happened in America, we hadn't yet had a season of it in Australia. And I thought, gee, I can sing pretty well. I'll do this. And the experience was I was too young. I think I was 17 or 18. I had no sense of self, no sense of who I was as a singer. I knew that I could sing, but I had no agency over my ability to storytell or really kind of concept of what good singing was or meant. I just had this instrument that I thought was better than other people's instruments.
Yeah, and you were right, by the way. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I lost to Rob Mills that year. He rubs it in my face.
God damn you,
He rubs
Millsy!
it in my face. But it was formative, and I'm so thankful for it because it actually turned me off singing for years because I didn't think like an artist. I didn't think of myself as an artist at the time. I just thought of myself as a singer. And I went through this experience that sort of made singing like a race that I then looked at other people. I came out of it going, ugh, if that's what it is, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But then over the years that followed, I went off and studied screenwriting and thought I was going to be a movie director and sort of did other things. But I then picked up singing again, but as an artist. I picked up the instrument of my voice as a storyteller and started to sort of think, well, hang on, the value for me of singing is storytelling. And I rediscovered the joy of singing in a way that I probably wouldn't have found if I had just, this microphone's going to fall. I probably wouldn't have found if I had just, I don't know, won Idol.
Yeah, that's right. What song did you sing in the audition? I can't wait.
Why do I feel so vulnerable with you asking me that? The audition was Eva Cassidy's version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Nope, I'm not singing.
No, I'm not going to ask you to sing.
Okay, great.
Was Dicko nice to you, or did he tell you that you could lose a few pounds? No?
No, they were great to me. It was, they were really sweet. I mean, I haven't looked at the videos from that. I actually have the audition tape because someone that we knew someone that worked at Channel 10 or something and sent it. I haven't watched it for years and I won't. But
Why not?
I don't know. It feels too uncomfortable.
It's a different guy.
But I do remember when I did see it, I just was like, oh, you're just a little baby. You shouldn't win. You shouldn't even be here. You know?
Go home.
Go home. I mean, just
go to bed.
I mean, the challenge is like, I don't know. I see this with a lot of young singers that will tell me like, I think I'm going to go on Idol. I think I'm going to go on The Voice. I think I'm going to do these reality shows, which as you know, the house always wins on those things. The winner is the show, and you either have to go in with your eyes open, knowing what you're going to get out of it and knowing how you're going to kind of work it into your overall plan. But you need to kind of have the brains to do that. And I think a lot of young singers sort of think, oh, I'm just going to see what happens.
Do you think that is because, and a lot of people say to me as well with radio, I want to do what you do. I'm going to, go on Love Island or something. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Great.
But do you think that is because fame is kind of projected as the end goal of happiness, that if you get famous, then you will achieve fulfillment?
I think so. I'm trying to reconnect to what I used to think.
I think it's because those talent shows, it's massive exposure and it's fun and it's exciting and it's an opportunity for everybody to love you.
Yeah.
And that is really intoxicating,
Yes.
particularly
Yes.
for young people.
Yes. And if you're somebody, particularly in this country, where you feel ignored and you feel overlooked, it feels like an opportunity to be seen and it feels like that will validate you and feel empowering. And what's the irony of it is that it's disempowering because, again, the house always wins. It's the winner of those shows is the show, the brand, Idol as a brand, The Voice as a brand. They win because they get the viewership. Very few of the sort of contestants that go through come out with something substantive for a career.
Yeah, for them personally.
Yeah.
And when you are an artist like yourself, that must be very frustrating for everybody to know, who you are and where you grew up, but don't really care about what you're saying.
Well, certainly for me, yes, I think as an artist, that sounds like a straitjacket. But there may be artists out there that don't care about any of that stuff and just
they just want the cash.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of your childhood, etc., you currently live in Los Angeles, but did you grow up in North Baldwin?
No, so I grew up in Knoxfield.
Right.
Are you from Melbourne?
Yes,
Great.
Born and bred.
Yeah, so I grew up in Knoxfield and went to school out in Wantirna South.
Right, yep.
So the Dandenongs is kind of my childhood. And then when I was 13, my parents moved us to Kew. They started a church in Kew. And so then from 13 onwards, I sort of lived in this whole area.
Oh, well, I mistakenly thought that you grew up in North Baldwin, and I have lived in North Baldwin.
I was born in North Baldwin.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Is there a hospital in North Baldwin? Were you a living room birth?
No, I was, in my
Hippies.
parents lived in North Baldwin when I was born. I was born on Cotham Road. There's a hospital.
Yeah, there is too.
Yeah,
I've dropped my mum there for a little
There
day
you go.
procedure.
That's where I was born.
The most famous person I've ever seen, I saw in North Baldwin.
Go on.
I was, there's a little village of shops. There's like a biodynamic butcher and a fruit and veg shop.
Yes.
It's closed now, but it was great. It was around the corner from where I lived. And I was in there choosing some coriander. And guess, the podcast is only an hour, so I'm going to have to speed this up. But Rumpelstiltskin style, can you guess who was in that tiny fruit and vegetable
Do you
shop?
maintain the most famous person that you have met?
Well, I have squeezed Kim Kardashian's bum.
Yeah, because I was going to say you've met some pretty famous people in your life.
I have, but aside from Kim Kardashian, this one, maybe only for me and my sort of folk music obsession.
Oh, gosh. Now I don't even want to guess. Just tell me.
Cat Stevens.
Shut up.
Cat Stevens.
That's wild. That feels like it.
Goosebumps thinking about it. And
that feels like seeing a white stag or something. Like just
a unicorn.
Yeah.
An actual unicorn.
Because also not completely out of context.
He was choosing some chives next to me. We were the only two people in this tiny.
Incredible.
And I was like, that is Cat Stevens. I could not believe my eyes.
Oh, that's great. That's a good story.
And it turns out, because of course I had to go on a deep dive, why is Cat Stevens in my local fruit and veg shop? Yeah. He was out. He wrote a musical.
Yes, Moon something. Yep. What's his song?
Moonshadow.
Moonshadow.
Yeah, and look, admittedly, it was the worst musical I've ever seen. It was absolutely woeful.
Yes.
Not taking anything away from the genius of Cat Stevens, but where it's probably disrespectful to refer to him as Cat Stevens because he doesn't go by that name anymore.
Yusuf Islam.
Yes. But he was out in Australia for that show.
Yeah.
And apparently every time he comes to Australia, which obviously isn't that often, he hires the same house in North Baldwin.
I love that.
It's magic.
I get that.
It's magic.
I travel a lot with music and things, and I'm the sort of person, maybe it's the hermit in me. I love to find routine. So if I visit a city, I love to stay in the same place, same house, I connect with that on a very deep level.
I've got a friend who he travels a lot for work and he only stays in Best Westerns. Right?
I completely get that.
And the reason is, I said to him the other day, I'm like, Why? I've got to ask, why always Best Westerns? And he said, because the kettle is the same in every room and the coffee sachets are the same. Duve Egbert.
Great.
Is the
But I get, like,
lights.
when your life is a bit chaotic, you sort of control the things that you can. And you're
Yeah.
like, I know what I'm going to get. I know that I'm going to be familiar with that kettle. And yeah, that makes total sense.
because I get rattled too if I don't know what's happening
Yes.
in my environment.
Yes.
I think the hermit era is the way of the future for both of us.
I think it's probably better for the environment.
Do you get homesick living in Los Angeles? How long have you been gone?
This is a good question. I moved there. I've been visiting for sort of extended trips since 2016, so it's been a while. I full-time moved there January 2020, which I thought was really good timing.
Great timing. It's almost like you knew.
I put everything on a boat, and I remember talking to my manager in January 2020, going, "Yeah, this is it. It's time. This is going to be my year."
Well, I mean, look, you're better off there than here.
Maybe. The jury's out, but yes, yeah. Well, for the pandemic, I was better off there.
Yeah.
Do I get homesick? I get asked this a lot. Funnily, I get homesick, but not for the things you think. I love my family and friends here. I don't really miss them when I'm there. But I just miss Melbourne. I miss the bad weather. Like, I'm here for winter for the first time in years, and I love it. It's cold, it's miserable, it's grey, it was raining yesterday, and it just could not have been, it felt like a warm hug to me.
Really?
So I miss that. I miss the food. I miss the cafes. I miss the coffee. I miss walking through. Collingwood is where I sort of spend a lot of my time when I'm here.
Cat Stevens style. You always say
Exactly.
Collingwood.
I love stay in Collingwood. I pick out my chives.
Is there a Best Western in Collingwood?
I did in booking my Airbnb this time. I very nearly stayed in exactly the same place, and I thought, no, I should try and branch out a bit.
Do you have regret for branching
No, because
out?
I'm staying in the building next door.
How good is Airbnb?
It's great. I mean, I feel like it's ruining some cities, but I love it.
I
As somebody
know.
who
Look, there's
uses it.
always a downside.
yeah.
But for me, and now I know you, I
Yes.
can absolutely see that, we're similar in so many ways. I love staying at an Airbnb, and the more of other people's shit and clutter in there, the better.
Yes. I don't like it. I prefer it if it's clearly somebody's house and choices. What you
So
find a
do
lot
I.
in America, there's a lot of like people that have clearly just bought the cheapest thing from IKEA and filled it out.
Yeah,
which is
no.
less interesting.
I just got back from Europe for the first time. I'd never seen Europe, and I treated myself for my 50th birthday.
Good for you.
To go on my own for a month, and it was everything I could have.
Yeah.
I mean, it was more than I ever could have
Yeah.
imagined. And I stayed in Airbnbs, and I would get so excited to check in.
Yes.
Because my first stop is to the cutlery drawer. And then my next stop is to the bookshelf. I mean, even though the books were in French, I was like, oh, what is this? Oh, Steinbeck. I'm in the right
That's
spot.
Great. That's so
I just
funny.
loved it.
Yeah, I get that.
And I also love when you check the pantry and there's a previous guest's
Yeah,
half-used salt and olive oil.
Yeah.
I love it so
That's
much.
great, yeah.
It's so good.
It's sort of the hermit's way to be like, I'm part of the human race. There are other people interacting with the same space.
That's right.
But I don't have to see them.
That's it. I'm at home. It's not my home.
It's not my home.
But it's a home. And that means everything to me. I even like bed linen that's clearly not hotel issue.
Yes.
Like, it's
Agreed.
just somebody's doona. We are couples dressing today.
Yes.
I have my T-shirt on.
Yes.
And you have one in
I
green.
do in green.
And it says, I've never been worse.
Never been worse on the front.
And on the back it says,
Never been better.
what a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata. Did you come up with this?
No, I mean, well, no, I didn't. I
think
make
you
up-
did.
Okay, I'll
Take credit for it.
Take it. Did I come up with the idea of singing it in a song that everybody will forever sing around me? Sure. Yes.
What does it mean to you? How did you come up with it?
I just was saying it a lot. People would say to me, "How are you doing?" I moved to LA to release what I thought was going to be my sort of magnum opus work of music through Atlantic Records. And it just sort of, according to a certain metric, failed catastrophically.
Which I do not understand.
I got a phone call from the president of the label at the start of last year, who was my A&R. This is when I was still signed to them. And he just basically was like, so we lost about $1 million on your project. And I was just like, thank you.
How?
You know, the budget for the record was a lot, and then marketing. I mean, I was signed. They thought that I was going to be a big artist. I mean, this is what happens. This is labels invest in development. They find someone that they think is a talent. They invest a lot thinking if we make a good music video and we make a good album and get him out there. And just for whatever reason, it didn't work. Well, we know why it didn't work. The pandemic happened. The music industry changed. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, if those things hadn't happened, I would have been a massive success. But I think these legacy institutions know how to do certain things, but the music industry really upended with TikTok, and labels don't. They used to be able to say, we'll put $500,000 into this project and something would happen because they had control over, you know, what Billboard would write about and what Rolling Stone would write about, whereas now they have no control over what pops off or not. So I kind of came out of that experience and, you know, I just turned 39. I feel I've never felt more present in my body, in myself, in my mind, as a storyteller, as a human being. I just feel great. And professionally, I feel in tatters. So it's this funny.
Yeah, so that's the never been worse part.
Correct. Like people ask sort of and I can't complain. I've had great things happen in my career, but it does feel a bit like I've invested all this money in this business, this shop that I'm running. I try to explain to people, it's like I've run a store. We had a minute where it was going really well, and so then we bought all this stock, and then everyone went, sorry, we actually don't really want to come here anymore. And it's like, okay. What do I do next?
Yeah, what do you do next? And also
marry up? I don't know.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
So lovely.
Oh, so lovely. That is not for us.
It's not for us. No, not
that's for other people.
That is.
If you had a choice between the situation that kind of makes you feel that you've never been worse,
yes,
and the situation that makes you feel like you've never been better, which would you rather change?
Oh, I mean, definitely that. Because the irony is 10 years ago it was flipped.
Yeah.
10 years ago I was playing the Grammys. I was writing songs for big artists.
Yeah, you were on stage with Cyndi Lauper. And
yeah, isn't that crazy?
I mean, unbelievable. I want to talk about the songs that you've written for other people as well.
No, so 10 years ago, just my career really felt like it was opening up and there was a real sense of momentum. But my personal life, I just felt in complete chaos.
Yeah.
So I know the answer to that. I know that I would rather be floundering professionally. It doesn't feel great when you go to pay for your car service and your credit card is declined. Like, that's tough, especially after you're like, but I played the Grammys.
I know. Don't you know who I am, Shell Guy?
But this year has been about me boiling everything down to the basics and going, you know what? I still know I can still write a song. I can still play a beautiful show. I did it last night in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I have reconnected with like, okay, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Like, I've run a successful store before. I can do it again. And this time I just have a really good sense of who I am.
I have spidey senses. You need to know this about me, Ben.
Go on. What are they telling you?
They're telling me that the best is yet to come for you. And if you keep pursuing this kind of dogged authenticity, then your shop is going to thrive.
I love that.
I feel like that's happening.
Okay, great.
Because also, you're amazing.
Well, even the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you is crazy to me.
I mean, look, 2 pieces of good news. You're here with me and Leanne is buying a ticket to go and see it. Well. So Leanne's not nothing.
No,
all right?
Leanne, in a way, Leanne is everything. That's why we do.
Leanne is waiting at your shop before it's open.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. Well, that makes me a bit teary.
It's exciting.
It's exciting. It is.
I had a chat with an Australian author called Liam Pieper who wrote a fantastic book. Are you a reader?
Trying to be more of one. Yeah. I go through moments where I read like 5 books during lockdown and then I I've only read one this year.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. A couple of pages and then you get distracted.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It is a bit. Yeah. I think you might be a little bit neurospicy as well, do you? Just a little bit. Anyway, I'm big on diagnoses.
I love it. Yeah, my sister just got diagnosed with ADHD. So.
Yeah, well, it's, it's genetic, so welcome. Anyway, he has written a fantastic book that nobody read apart from me, and I loved it. It's called Feel Good Hit of the Year. Is that right? Yeah, Feel Good Hit of the Year. Yes. Anyway, he's also a ghostwriter, so that's where he makes his money.
Yeah.
And I had a really great chat with him about all of this work that he does and then all the book tours. He's nowhere to be found, even though he has written this book.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it just seemed so unfair to me. He had a really great take on it in that, he feels like he is just the instrument, that this person has an amazing story. The story is theirs, but they can't get it onto paper, and he's just basically the surrogate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel it took a lot of convincing for me to understand his point of view, and I feel the same way for people that write amazing songs and then give them to others and they get all the credit. But the power of music is in the performance, but I think it's also in the lyrics and the meaning of the music. And I know that you have written songs for big artists and Kesha, for example.
That's how we met, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Isn't that crazy?
Because Sam Pang, who I used to work with, thought Praying by Kesha was like the best song he'd ever heard. And I had to lift the lid and say, Kesha's got nothing to do with it.
Well, no,
Here is the man that is responsible.
She definitely had something to do with that. But maybe not quite as much.
It's your song. I mean, if you've ever heard a Ben Abrahams song, you hear that song, it's a Ben Abrahams song.
That's very sweet.
What does it feel like? And how does it happen as well?
How does it happen is an easy answer. It happens because my team, my managers and sort of people around me recognized that I'm a storyteller, recognized that I had sort of an instinct for pairing good emotion with good melodies, and basically put me in the room with songwriters and sort of went to LA and said, I mean, my team are American, but they sort of went around LA to all their friends going, you got to get this guy in a room with your artist. He's great. His songs are great and stuff.
What a gift you have, by the by. Yes, keep going.
Well, yeah. And then you meet artists and what I've learned, I've done every version of a songwriting career, and there are lots of different versions of it. There's like a Sia type writer who Sia herself has said, I'm not better than anyone else. I just am willing to write more than most people. So she'll write 1,000. I mean, she doesn't do as much now, but back in the day, peak Sia would go to so many different rooms and just
like a machine.
Yeah. She just will sit there and, so the process of songwriting in that world is one person's playing music and a beat, and a singer like a Sia or someone is usually on a microphone just going, and then you all sit around going, what would that word maybe be? I should have said I loved you, but it was not for me.
Fascinating to me because I'm utterly unmusical.
That's how
it's like a miracle.
That's how a lot of pop music is written. I tried that. I'm not very good at it. What I have learned I am good at is spending a day with someone, getting to know their life, getting to know their hopes and dreams, getting to know, who they are. And then we sit at a piano and I can sort of distill that. So I remember when a lot of the verse lyric content for Praying I was responsible for. I remember when we brought that to Kesha's team and to Kesha, and all of them were just like, how did you know? How did you get this so right?
Wow.
And I think that if I have any gift, I think it's actually that. I think I'm a decent musician. I think I'm a great singer, decent melody writer. But I think what I can really do is distill emotion into things. And so back to your other question of like, how does it feel? That part feels amazing, actually.
Okay.
And what I find interesting is a lot of the songs that I've had out, so I have a song with the Chicks, who used to be the Dixie Chicks, with Kesha, with Ben Platt, with an artist called Rabel, with Wafia. I get all the emotional songs. And it's not because they're the only songs I write. I write every type of song. I try and write dance songs and pop songs. But what ends up happening, the one that resonates with the team, is so on the Chicks album, which was called Gaslighter, it came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
The song I had was I'm ready to forgive you and move on song. It's just a classic Ben Abraham, emotional heart on sleeve. I'm quite proud of that, and I actually enjoy. I connect with that author's idea of being a sort of surrogate for other people. I similarly think, if my gifting is to help you distill how you feel into music, then I'm thrilled to be able to do it. The business side of my brain is perplexed that I've had such big songs with other people and I can't seem to do that for myself.
I'm also perplexed, but I feel
it's also that just happens.
And also, please refer to my earlier Spidey sense.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I feel like it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. I want to ask you something, and it's just a personal question.
Great.
Is it normal to be singing along to a song and you get to certain parts and you can't sing it anymore because you're crying?
Huh. I don't do that. That's interesting.
I do that.
Yeah.
All the time.
Wow. Wow. Do you find that you just connect with music on such an emotional level?
Certain points of it.
That's
because
beautiful.
I love a sing, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I've got a microphone set up in my bedroom.
Sing?
Just because it makes me feel good. I get the biggest rush of endorphins from it.
That's great. Yeah.
And I just realised I just wasn't doing it enough.
Yeah.
I was only doing it in the car.
Aussies don't do it enough.
We don't.
It's a real cultural thing. Aussies don't. That's why we don't have sort of a lot of big voices that come out of this country.
It's the most wonderful way to pass the time.
And it's a beautiful communal thing.
And you can sing whatever you want. Some days, like when I'm cleaning, yesterday I was cleaning my room.
Yeah.
Boz Skaggs.
Let's go.
Whoa, Lido. I mean, banger after banger.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do have a microphone set up in my room. And sometimes when I'm just singing around, I go, oh, here's an opportunity. And I turn it on and I have a little
love
sing.
that.
Yeah,
That's
it's the best.
Brilliant.
It's the best. It's the best thing that I do. But there are some songs that I can't get through without crying. And one of them is Tend to Feel Sadler, the great Peter Allen.
Yes.
And one of them is your song, Requiem.
Oh, wow.
Which we're going to get to soon.
Yeah.
And I promise you I won't cry. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see someone weep.
You've heard my music. I have a lot of people that cry at my shows.
I know. Leanne, talking to you. Can I give you a little box of Kleenex for you to take to the show to give to Leanne, all right?
Yes. I should sell tissues as merch.
And maybe because she is such a super fan,
yeah,
I'll slip in a little tenor lady as well because she could get a bit excited. I want to talk about your amazing story of bravery and authenticity.
Yeah.
You grew up in the church.
Yes.
And just as an aside, as I said, I've just come back from Europe and I went to Vatican City.
Oh, wow.
And my guide, because I'm a full tourist.
Of course.
I had the headset.
That's great. It's the best, yeah.
It's the best.
It's so good to do that stuff. There's a reason that it is successful. Yeah.
Ben, I couldn't agree more. You meet at a weird little spot and you're with a couple from Cincinnati. And, it's just magic. Anyway, the story, among the thousands of stories, of course, that you can imagine that she could tell about Vatican City, there is this thing called, I want to say a magic door. No, it's the Holy Door.
The Holy Door.
And do you know about the Holy Door?
No, I don't.
Okay, so the Holy Door is cemented shut. It's in St. Peter's Basilica. And the Pope decides when to open it. And the next year that it's going to be open is next year, which is a massive year for, Catholic people. And they're expecting 35 million pilgrims.
Oh, my God.
To converge on Vatican City just to get through the magic door. Now, the Holy Door.
I sort of don't mind magic doors.
I like it too. So let's just call it the magic door.
Call it the magic door.
So someone comes in, I don't know, Mario, under the cover of darkness and unseals the magic door. And then it's open.
Yeah.
And I think it only happens once every 15 years. Don't at me, Catholics, all right? Just, I'm just trying to express that it's only a sometimes treat.
Yes.
Anyway, he unseals it and you can walk through it. Yeah. And by some miracle, everything you've ever done is forgiven. It's like the ultimate passage.
It is a magic door.
And it's a magic door. You go in, full of sin and obviously going to hell, and then once you're through the magic door, bang, everything you've ever done absolved. And it just astonishes me that 35 million people will go to Vatican City to walk through this magic door. And I think faith is so interesting.
That's just quite a beautiful concept.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of tragic as well in a way, but it's just quite a beautiful that somebody would make that sort of pilgrimage, that they would feel like they've done enough in their life that they just need to go through a door to sort of
But don't you think
absolve.
I'm a DIY sort of girl. Why can't we just make our own magic door?
Well, yeah, whole other conversation. Yes, of course. But does the gesture of that feel enough? I don't know. Maybe for some people, the sort of magic of getting on a plane, making a pilgrimage to the other side of the world. I don't know. There's something sort of sad and poetic and beautiful about it.
Yeah,
for me.
And also a bit nonsense.
Oh. No, I would never say. Sweet Ben would never say.
The lovely nonsense.
Yes. Well, I mean, the realist in me is sort of also like, well, yeah, it's just.
The faith is a lovely sort of nonsense, I think.
Yeah. I mean, my relationship with faith is interesting. I grew up in I grew up in the Pentecostal Christian church, which is a very charismatic. It's the commercial end of it is Hillsong, but it's much bigger and sort of broader and a little more complex than that sort of presentation of it. But I grew up in a very kind of all-encompassing expression of faith. And I have found, and I think this is very common for a lot of people of my generation, as I've gotten older, there's a word that the people use called, they sort of deconstruct. I don't love that word because it implies that I had constructed anything to begin with, but I've certainly tried to set on fire these things, well, by will or also just things were set on fire in my life. And there have been several more points where I've sort of thought, I think I'm good. I think I'm done. And the interesting thing about faith, or certainly my faith, is that every time there's that sort of fire experience, I kind of am still left with something. I haven't been able to fully, pull it out of my body.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting as I'm older, I feel so comfortable being a believer and accepting how sort of absurd a lot of it is. And I just feel very comfortable talking about God and my relationship with God, and with the fact that, I sort of have attempted many ways to kind of remove it from my life, and I seem to keep circling back. And certainly for me, my music and my spirituality are so intertwined that I can't, even if I'm like, all right, I'm done, I don't believe in God anymore, as soon as you put me at a piano, I can't help but feel it again when I'm playing.
Yeah.
I'm just like, there it is. There's my faith.
When you grow up with a strong focus on faith, is it hard to accept alternative realities? Like, for example, we're all Catholic, kind of, in terms of we got baptised.
Yeah.
We went to Catholic schools.
Yeah.
But Pentecostal and those sorts of religions, and Jehovah's Witnesses, I was very close with a Jehovah's Witness family. It's very, like, it's in everything that the family does.
Yes.
Everything. Like, I grew up thinking tuna monet was a delicious meal, and it shocked me to find out that perhaps other people didn't agree with me.
Yeah.
At what point did you start going, not everybody thinks the way that we think?
It's a great question. Well, in terms of the reality outside of your own, because it's so all-encompassing, because my impression of Catholicism is that for a lot of people it's sort of Sunday Mass.
Yeah.
And then you sort of, maybe if you go to Catholic school, it's a bit more through your week, but otherwise you're then sort of with your family and doing your life, and then you kind of go in and out of the church.
Yeah.
When you grow up in the environment I grew up in, you're right, it's everything. But what's interesting as well for me, particularly, my parents were not raised religiously and had very radical conversions in their 20s.
Right.
So for them, it was a very spiritual reality. And so we were...
Yeah, and they chose it.
Correct.
Yeah.
They were not indoctrinated. I mean, obviously, I suppose the indoctrination came later, but they weren't raised in any of the sort of things that they raised us in. And I say that because I was raised in an environment where it wasn't just like, come on, kids, this is what we do. It was a real... They live and continue to live and breathe it. Like it's their it's their reality.
They're pastors, aren't they still? Yeah.
Yes. The purity and simplicity of their faith is so beautiful, and I love it. I love that it's inspiring, you know. And so it was interesting. I grew up in that environment where it was like, this is who we are. This is what you know. It's not just the things that we do. It's like it's in every part of our lives.
Yeah.
So as you get older, I think for me, you know, in my 20s, really confronting questions around sort of my identity and sexuality and the sort of journey that I've gone through and coming to terms with that. I feel like that questions that I started asking probably as a teenager, in a way, kind of, it's like Neo in the Matrix when he starts to sort of see the Matrix for what it is. I think, and I mean, RuPaul talks about this idea that drag is all about kind of playing with the constructs of the Matrix. And I feel like when you're a queer kid growing up in that environment, you can't help but see from the outside certain things. You just can't help but be like, oh, I'm in this moment, feeling what you're all feeling, but I'm also observing to an extent because there's a part of me that doesn't fully fit into what is happening here.
How long did you keep the secret of your identity from your family? And was there ever a moment where you went, I'm never going to talk about this?
Well, these are good questions that no one's asked me. Interestingly, and I think that this is sort of something that there's nuance to this that some people might not get their head around. I've been talking to my parents about sexuality since I was about 12. And obviously with the vocabulary of a 12-year-old of not knowing what that is, but sort of educating them, I guess. So it's actually been a conversation with them for a long time. As I got older, it took me a lot longer to kind of open up to other people in my life. And my parents were beautiful. I mean, they handled it as best as anyone in their situation can handle it. You know, they made plenty of mistakes that they'll openly talk about as well, you know, but they also they've been beautiful. They've always sort of only ever loved me and only ever supported me and shown me, you know, love and a place of safety. But at the same time, there was just a lot that I had to kind of navigate myself. And because of that, inevitably, it's very isolating and it took me a while to be able to talk about it in an open way with my close friends and my siblings. And that took a long time.
Do you believe that the longer you deny your authentic self, the messier it is for you and others?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I do think so. I think what's so interesting now as a 39-year-old, now that I feel like I have completely liberated myself from any sense of shame around who I am and, you know.
Actually, we should stop down and just, can you give in a nutshell your story? Because I know it and you know it, but.
Yeah.
And Leanne obviously knows it.
Leanne knows it.
Yeah. Grew
up in church and realized early on that I was a queer kid. And I say queer, well, we'll get to it. Sort of fell in love with this woman in my 20s, which was real. Like it was not there were unanswered questions, but I wouldn't say that I was in denial of myself or anything. I brought all of my queerness into that relationship, although not necessarily talking to her about it till too late. That ended catastrophically because I hadn't, up to that point, I'd never talked about my queerness. So I was sort of trying to love someone with most of me, but not all of me, which just doesn't work.
No.
Then sort of had a kind of catastrophic ending to that sort of forced me to have to confess my sins. So that's what the song Requiem is about. I had to basically, I don't mind talking frankly about it. I, in a moment of sort of pain, cheated on her with some random dude that I met off Craigslist on a trip. It's so sad. It's so,
Oh my God.
It's so funny. It's sort of quite sweet and pathetic when I think about it.
And it's also such a desperate attempt to get it out there.
So, yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my God, Ben can't do this.
Yeah.
How can I facilitate the burning down of this situation?
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes I just wonder, where is he now? I wonder how that sweet guy.
Hit us up on the ChrissieCast Insta page.
Let's get your side of the story. And it wasn't even, I mean, look, anyway, I also had sworn that I would never, if she ever asked me, I would never lie to her. I mean, you can talk about what your definition of honesty is, but I ended up telling her, breaking her heart, and that just sort of, then I had to have a meeting in the type of church that I was in, sort of with all the leaders, and tell them what had happened. And I had never talked about, I'd talked with like 3 or 4 people about, my journey with queerness, but I'd certainly never told this room of 14 people. So that's sort of what the song Requiem is ultimately about. It was like a rebirth experience for me. Now I can look back and think of it as quite a beautiful experience, but it was really tough. My parents now are like, they were flying so blind, and they just were like, we just didn't know what we were doing,
What I love about that story is that I can't imagine that time of your life.
Well,
the confrontation, the fear, the terror, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
But you orchestrated that. It was like it was like your authentic self saying, you got to fuck shit up or you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
and then you looked up Craigslist and the rest is history.
Isn't that so? And here we are.
No wonder I can't get through Requiem without crying.
It's so fascinating. I had someone else actually 2 weeks ago. I was speaking at Whopper, and one of the teachers said the same thing. She was like, I need to know what that song's about because I can't listen without crying. Yeah, isn't that interesting?
I mean, I knew your story.
Yeah.
And the minute I heard Requiem, I mean, I got that album the minute that it was released, and it's incredible.
Thank you.
But once I got to Requiem, I was like, oh my God. What was it like writing it?
That part easy, because that's what I do. I go through the most kind of productive space for me is to be in emotion, whether it's my own or someone else's, and that it's the easiest thing in the world to pick up a guitar and write a song.
I want to go back to your amazing story.
Yeah.
It would have been horrific at the time. Everybody has a story. Mm-hmm. And if you're brave enough to own it and tell the people around you, what advice can you give to people that might be struggling with situations like this?
Right. I got asked this yesterday.
What are the steps? What do you do?
I don't know. I sort of think you have to just go through it. I think maybe the best advice that I would want to have been told is the sort of the cheesy cliche now of like, it gets better. I think maybe my version of that is it's allowed to be messy and it's allowed to be nuanced. One of the things that I was most afraid of in talking publicly about my story was even now I feel in the margins a little bit. I feel I have no problem people saying that I'm gay. I certainly have tried that hat on. I like to say queer. I don't like any of the labels. They all feel restrictive to me. But what I'm trying to say is like, I just always love a few asterisks after things because it's like, I don't know, my story's unfolding. I don't know what happens next. And I don't, I want to be authentic, and I also want the freedom to discover what that is over the course of my life. And I think my advice to young people, and the truth is the world is a lot more complex now anyway. Young people kind of are doing this, but people that were in my situation is just like, it's allowed to be messy and you're allowed to figure it out as you go.
And you're allowed to change.
Yeah, we need to change.
I was having a conversation with someone recently, you just reminded me, and they were calling me to question about something I'd said 2 years ago or something. And I was like, oh, did I say that? No. And they were like, yeah, but why would you say that if you don't mean it? I go, I would have meant it then. I was a different person.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a different person sometimes every Tuesday. And then other things, I look back at something I believed 100% 5 years ago, and I think, I cannot relate to that person at all.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? And it's the magic door of life. It's the evolution.
Yeah. Yes. And I think the world needs more space for that nuance and for the ability.
Yeah.
And I'm such a believer that shame, we're just not, as human beings, I mean, the person of faith in me knows that as human beings, we're not supposed to carry it. We're not supposed to experience it. And it's absurd to me that, in a community of faith where we're all sort of going, okay, we're all here because we believe the same thing. That should just be a direction thing. We're all just pointed at the same direction. That's okay. But in terms of how you get there, good luck.
Yes.
Great. If you believe the same as me, great. Good luck. I'll share with you how I do it, but I'm not going to try and control how you do it, because at the end of the day, we're all stumbling toward the same thing. I think life should be more like that in any capacity. I think, that when we put sort of expectations on ourselves or on each other to sort of behave a certain way, or you end up. I mean, I just finished watching. In one day, I watched Baby Reindeer. Did you see that?
Oh yes, I did.
I connected so deeply with his journey of shame, and there were so many moments where I was so infuriated watching this guy have no boundaries with people. And then as you grow the story and understand that this shame is sort of that he's carrying, that's this invisible kind of straitjacket. I was like, oh my God, the answer is just like, what if we all just had a little bit less shame about ourselves and learned to just be like...
It's so interesting because everybody watched that show, and I watched it too, and all the headlines after it was about the woman.
Of course.
And she's the least interesting character in the entire thing.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned him because obviously, I related to him too. And the element that I loved was how he kept on trying to make her feel okay, even though he was being so mistreated. Yeah. That really spoke to me. Yes. I was like, I would do exactly the same thing because, I just want to make everything okay for that person. Yes.
Well, which actually is a beautiful, healthy instinct, but because of the shame in his life, he didn't have the healthy boundary to be able to do that in a way that was healthy for both of them. Yeah. So it's like, because I think like the answer is not he should have just been like, get the fuck away. Like, no, it's actually a beautiful gesture to be kind to someone.
Yeah. It felt very human to me.
You can do it in a way that you also have healthy boundaries. I know.
Him going to her house and looking through the window, I was like, crazy. It's a hard relate. I would do that.
So I'm
too curious.
I'm working with a playwright friend of mine. We've written a TV show idea that actually began with that Requiem meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we've just sort of been we just got development funding for it. Who knows what'll happen, but we're in the world of like, just trying to tell my story basically, and in that same sort of. So Baby Reindeer was a very like, I just related on so many. I mean, my story is so different to his, but I just related on so many levels to this idea of this poor guy sneaking around.
Me too. Now, Ben.
Yes.
It's time.
Okay.
Will you please perform?
It would be my pleasure.
Requiem. And I promise you I won't cry. But my fingers are crossed, so maybe I will.
Write us a song, they said. Tell us your truth, you've got nothing to hide. We'll tell them the truth I did, and exposed what I had locked inside. I laid it out across the floor and cried. described, and they reached for their children and covered their eyes. This was not a song for angry men. What I wrote for them was a requiem. Go on and run, she sighed. I wish you could see all the things that I have seen. Well, here on the other side, it feels the same as when I was 19. I should have read up on my I ran for the corner the poet described, and I stood in the sun and I saw myself die. I was so afraid of angry men, and what I wrote for them was a requiem. This is something to remember me by. 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 Remember me. Remember me.
That is my favourite thing that has ever happened on this podcast.
That is, well, thank you.
Ben Abraham, I can't even speak. Ben Abraham, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This is, what an honour. It's great.
Good, huh? Go straight to your playlist, Ploys, and add that. It's called Requiem. And while you're there, add War in Your Arms. And what the hell, the whole album is sublime. It's called Friendly Fire. Add it, add it, add it. You're welcome. Now, also, I mentioned briefly in the chat that we would talk about Love Island later, and we never got around to it. So I should just finish that off for you, because Ben's cover version of the Paula Cole song, I Don't Want to Wait, I don't want to wait for our love to be over, has been picked up for the latest season of Love Island, which will clearly make it the most gorgeous element of that show. You can actually hear and see a snippet of that song on Ben's Instagram at Ben Abraham. And while you're hitting follow, check out my Insta page for this podcast stuff at the ChrissieCast. In the meantime, I'm going to weep some more to Ben's music because it makes me feel alive. Get on it. Till next time, I love you so. Can't wait to meet again.